How you
You are
doing?
fantastic. What's going on, man? How are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Oh, good. Yeah. Hopefully we got Mark Sigloff joining us because I want to give away some free gear tonight. I mean, I am interested in what you have to say, but I'm also pretty pumped that somebody's going to win maybe like a Foot Locker tonight.
You know what? I don't think you and I qualify for the raffle, but hey, I'm in.
I I don't
Well,
know.
I'm
We're here.
I'm
We're doing the webinar. I feel like we should qualify for the raffle. Mark, you there
I'm
yet?
I'm here and I have gear.
So
All
yeah,
right.
who knows? Truth be told, everything summer camp has been extremely generous with the Thurber family, and my boys proudly bring their everything summer camp trunks to YMCA Camp Belknap, where they're going to be going now for, let's see, it'll be Dacha's what, fifth year as a camper and Sava's third year as a camper. And the trunks are going strong. They get used as card tables. They get used as launch pads, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Which is exactly
So look,
why
if
I'm
if
not
you're
going
just
to get my boys these trunks for a few more years.
well, I don't know, get him going early.
Well, yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
guess I could put them inside the trunks at this point because they're 3 and 4, but
I don't know, Mark. Is there enough air inside a trunk to like last the afternoon?
There is, but I just don't recommend it. Like,
Uh-oh, the
I
lawyers
mean,
are
this
on
is
this
a
one.
parenting workshop, right? This is about rules are meant to be positive.
Oh, sorry. Right. Gosh. All right. Yeah, I'm pretty psyched. All right. Yeah, we have your title slide up. Uh, and we're just welcoming everyone to the Wiser Crack series here, Better Parenting in 30 Minutes. So psyched that Scott Arizala is here. He's going to be talking about rules were made to be positive, which I will say, in all honesty, we've got 105 videos on expertonlinetraining.com. Scott, you've heard me say this before, but I'm going to make you blush. And that is the single most influential video for me as a parent. So, the things that I host on Expert Online Training are like a lot of things that I do some of the time. I really didn't do the positive framing of rules and requests that you do. It's just, it's fantastic. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well,
yeah.
I don't mean to make you blush either, but I will tell you that being a faculty member for online training has been one of the highlights of my career for sure.
Oh, sweet. Do you think, like, what's on tap for this summer?
As far as videos,
Yeah, like, because we're always looking to make new stuff.
yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm really interested in doing some more leadership stuff, supervision stuff, really
Okay.
getting in on the level of maybe not so much the directors, although I would be happy to look at some content directly, directed to them, but really the sort of middle management of camp.
Yeah.
I know we've done some leadership things before. We've done some things around difficult, conversations and whatnot, but as you well know, Chris, and I'm sure you know too, Mark, that it's really those middle managers at camp that really drive the experience from the kids to the parents to the rest of the staff. I mean, they're kind of at the center point, and so I think I'd like to spend some time really looking at what that group needs.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I think I hear a lot from camp directors that they would really like to empower those middle managers. I mean, these are the future unit leaders. These are the future uh, assistant director, director level positions, and we're usually promoting people in camp because they are wonderful people. That doesn't necessarily mean that they know much about management, right? Which is different
Yeah.
than cabin leadership, or if you're in a day camp, being a frontline counselor.
Yeah, and you'll have to forgive me. Actually, you know the library much better than I. I'm wondering about considering that this webinar is partly for parents, mostly for parents. Is there anything in the library that's really about working with parents?
Well, we have two that are sort of working with difficult parents, right? But that's not most parents. So we have advanced skills for working with difficult parents, part one, which has to do with anxious and overbearing parents. And then we have an advanced skills for working with difficult parents, part two, that's sort of, aggressive and bossy parents. But I think that, you know, two things that we need to cover. One would be customer service perspective in working with parents. And I think parents have appropriately high expectations for what camp staff are like, right? I mean, youth development professionals, so there's that sort of just professional interaction from the basic level of warm handshake, eye contact, and then I think there are more advanced things having to do with asking the right question, how to best care for your son or daughter, and describing maybe your own leadership style or the philosophy of the camp. But I think, just saying your name and having a staff shirt on is not enough, right? So,
yeah. Hey, we're getting a couple of comments, Chris, about lots of feedback.
So let's see. It looks like my voice is running on a serious echo, so I'm going to turn off my mic and turn it back on.
Let me ask, is anybody getting an echo from Mark or from Scott?
So I hear a little bit of echo for you guys. I don't know if tuning up my mic now has helped at all.
I'm not getting any echo from anybody.
Well, I don't. I may switch to headphones and see whether that helps. And then we're almost going to be ready to get started. Let's see.
Chris, you sound fine now. How about me?
You sound great, Mark.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Okay, well, I'm just going to put it out there. I think the problem is on my end, and now that I'm wearing headphones, it's not a big deal. Right? Okay. So
well, of course it was.
Of course. All right. So you know what? I'm going to turn off the screen share, and let's all turn on our video cams because now it's 9:32. We're going to introduce ourselves.
All right.
All right. Hey, we're all here. Hey, so I want to start just by saying welcome everybody to tonight's WISER Cracks webinar series. I'm Dr. Chris Thurber, co-founder of expertonlinetraining.com. Really happy to be with Scott Arizala tonight and Mark Sigaloff. I'm going to have to get used to having this cord here. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about these cats in a minute, but we get a really cool webinar planned tonight. And I want to switch back to screen share before I let Scott and Mark introduce themselves to tell you a little bit about the origin of this webinar series. So back to the screen share for just a minute. We at Expert Online Training have constructed a library of 105 video training modules that are designed to complement the on-site training that staff receive when they arrive at camp. We know from talking to thousands of camp directors around the world that none of them has enough time with the staff on-site to cover everything they want to cover. So expertonlinetraining.com is a website that hosts a library of video training modules that staff use for pre-season, pre-arrival training. We also wanted to create a resource for parents, which is the origin of the Praxis page that you're looking at right now. And Praxis means translating theory into practice. It's what every parent does almost automatically. And we have a rotating series of themes. Scott is kicking off the theme of positive leadership tonight. So the Praxis page is something that we hope a lot of camp owners and directors will share with their parent families. And we feature about each month a different theme. So this month's theme is positive leadership. You're going to hear about that in a minute. And we change everything on here when we introduce a new theme. So we have a new webinar. We feature one of the EOT videos, a new 60-second seminar, a new article, and we're always updating what our 27 talented faculty are doing. And for camp directors, we post a handout that they can use related to this topic. So that's what Praxis is all about. And when you're on the Expert Online Training website, expertonlinetraining.com, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, click on Praxis, and enjoy some of the free resources there. All right, so at this point, I will keep the screen share going, and I want to turn things over to the incomparable, talented, and ever popular Scott Arizala. Tell us what we got tonight, Scott.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate the warm introduction. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, everybody. Rules are made to be positive. The idea for this particular webinar came from a bunch of work that both Chris and I have been doing in the camp space for quite some time. And the idea really is about expectations. And as parents and as youth development professionals, there are a ton of things that we do to create expectations, to create what really is what is the foundation for success. And so tonight we're going to talk for a little bit about how to create rules and expectations in the positive so that kids can be successful.
All right, fantastic. You want me to go to the next slide? You ready for that action?
Yes, please.
All right. Wow, who's that cat?
So like Chris said, my name is Scott Arizala. I'm a summer camp consultant and trainer. What does that mean? I know I get that question a lot. Basically means that this is the kind of stuff I get to do with my whole career. I spend a lot of my time doing conferences, summer camp trainings, working with camps year-round on their leadership, on their facilities, so on and so forth. I'm also, like many people probably on this webinar, a lot like you guys, I'm a summer camp owner and executive director. I've owned and operated a camp here in Michigan for the last 5 years called Camp Tall Tree. We're a 1-week traditional overnight camp experience for kids on the autism spectrum, as well as a camp director that I actually just transitioned out of for the last 12 years out in the Philadelphia area for kids with serious illnesses and disorders. I'm obviously a faculty member of Expert Online Training and now the proud project manager of Expert Online Training as well as an author. I write for Camping Magazine and Camp Business and a couple of other things, as well as I wrote a book called S'more Than Camp, which we might be giving away later. The most important sort of qualification I have is I'm a dad of 3. I have a little girl named Linnea, who's 7, a little boy named Desmond, who's 4, and a little boy named Griffin, who's 3. And I'll be talking a lot about him over the course of the next half an hour. If you want to go to the next slide, Chris.
You betcha. Here we go.
So why? That's got to be a question that all of you, especially the parents that are on the webinar, are asking right now. Why should rules and expectations be positive? Well, as you can see, this is my little one named Griffin. He's 3 now, and I think there's sort of 3 big reasons why I want us to really think about rules and expectations as far as how do we create this sort of positive momentum, this positive foundation for young people, for kids. The first and foremost is that as parents, we need to try different things. We need some more tools. I don't know about all of you, but I feel like every day I feel like I'm pushed to the very edge with my kids. And as parents, the distance between these 2 feelings that you see on your screen right now, the one on the left where he's smiling and the one on the right where he's totally falling apart. That distance is almost nothing between those 2 things. And what can we do to help slide him more towards that left side and more towards that feeling great and avoid, or at the very least have a backdrop when we are dealing with that feeling on the right. I mean, how much of your life is spent telling your kids how much time is left? I have to tell my kids to put their shoes and socks on probably an average of 15 times before we leave the house every morning. When it comes down to all these kinds of things, it really is about knowing what to do, knowing what those expectations are. I think the second big thing, one is that we're parents and we need more tools. I think another sort of big piece about why rules and expectations should be positive is because there's actually some science behind this. There's some brain science behind this. And I'm not as academic as Dr. Thurber, so I'm not going to be able to quote the research here, but I can tell you that positives and negatives are processed differently in your brain. There's a different way that your brain thinks about those things. And so a quick example around something like that would be if I gave all of you on this webinar an instruction, a very simple instruction, in fact, to don't think about a red ball. I can't even see all of you, and I can see all the little red balls popping up all over the place. And it's a good example of how your brain, when it's a negative, just thinks about it differently than a positive. It processes that idea differently. And so thinking about that example, there's some science underneath why we should be giving kids positive expectations versus just a lot of sort of no, stop, don't, or the typical rules. And then the last sort of big piece to understand why rules should be positive or expectations should be positive is really, in my opinion, it's about kind of unlocking the hidden or unwritten rules to success. If you think about, for example, the last time you walked into a different airport or a different grocery store than you're used to, or a foreign country, all these places, right? There's so much success in this space is based on knowing what you're supposed to do. In a different airport, you know some of the things that you're not supposed to do, right? And that's sort of secondary to your success in a different airport. You're not supposed to, just run through security. You have to check your bag. You have to, some of the basics, but you don't know necessarily where Delta check-in is. You don't know which way to go to get your bags. And some of those things are intuitive, and some of those things you can follow the signs, some of them aren't. I just had a very funny experience here in town where I went to the same grocery store that I normally go to, or the same franchise that I normally go to, just on the other side of town. And it's laid out completely differently. And it was so interesting to me because I was walking through and I didn't know where anything was. I didn't know where the fruits that I like were, the brands that I like. I didn't know where the food was. I'm in a grocery store. And then, my last example was the foreign country, right? I mean, for anybody who's been to a foreign country before, it's sometimes it's very clear, and you kind of know what not to do. Not everything, of course, but again, so much of your success is based on knowing what you're supposed to do. And so that is where this idea came from. And that's why I think that knowing what to do creates that sort of foundation for success for both. This is for both parents and youth development professionals. This is what we need to do out there. I mean, there's still room for the no's and the stops and the don'ts, because we know that's going to happen. We know that's important, because we have to pull kids back sometimes, and we have to make sure that we're saying no or stop or don't. But that needs to be the backdrop as far as understanding what we're supposed to do. So the natural next question, Chris and Mark, would be when, where, and what, of course. So Chris, can you go to the next slide for me? So I've answered that question for everybody, right? When, right now, where, everywhere, and what, everything. Why don't we go back to the webcams and we can kind of talk about what I mean by no, now, everywhere, and everything.
All right, so you're saying that what's happening in the brain is that whether you say don't think about a red ball or think about a red ball, it's basically all thinking about a red ball, and we're processing.
Well, right. Yeah. This is why great youth development professionals say walk, please, right? Because right. Have you ever seen an adult yell at a kid, "Hey, don't run, don't run, don't run, don't run"? Well, what do you think is in the kid's brain now? You just put it in their brain 9 times and you're yelling at them about it, right? In order for me to think about not running, what do I got to think about? Running.
Wait, so are you saying that I should probably say to my boss, "Don't give me a raise"?
No, I'm not saying that.
All right.
This is a Jedi mind trick that only works on kids.
Okay. All right. No, but it's
I'm just saying that your brain thinks about it differently. Yes. You're the academic. You're the one that could probably tell me where that research is from.
Well, no, it's how your brain is yourself
processing through that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. When you say a word, your brain is going to process it. So if I say raise, are going to process that word along with all the other words. So there's a big difference between don't run and please walk.
Yep, that's exactly right. So let's talk about it. When I said now, everywhere, and everything, what did I mean? Now. Well, there isn't a bad time to talk about what should be happening, right? And as every parent out there knows, right? Yes, it can drone on and on. It seems like I'm saying this over and over and over again. But what we're doing is we're buying ourselves credibility. We're creating trust when we say, no, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Now, right now, here's what we're supposed to be doing. We're going to set the table. We're going to get out the food. We're going to serve our own plates, and then we're going to eat every time. We talk about it every time. So now there's never a bad time to talk about what should be happening. And what I mean by, everywhere, it's because I think, everyone can use explicit instructions sort of wherever you are, whatever you're doing. It's sort of when we start to assume that everyone knows what's up, that's when I think people get lost in the mix, and we start losing kids, and they start their understanding of what might be going on can vary. And so everywhere, I think it's totally fine to repeat ourselves. And then, of course, everything, again, because we can't assume that people just know what's happening in all different environments. And that's one of the key pieces about everything, is because I believe that this skill is now transferable for kids. I believe that when we as adults can do this better for kids, when we can be as consistent as we can, and we're really explaining what is supposed to be done, then they're going to start to understand that the key is to figure that out, right? The key is to get into school and figure out, what am I supposed to do right now? Right? Because this adult's different than my dad. This adult's different than my mom. This adult is different than the guy I hang out with at after school care. This is different than my camp counselor. So, but what's the same about everybody? The same is what I got to figure out is what are their expectations of me, and how can I fulfill those expectations? And as soon as I can get that, okay. And that's the transferable skill. That's why I think now everywhere, everything, when it comes time to creating really great expectations. But begs that next question, right, guys? Well, how do we do that? And so I think it really breaks down into 3 parts. So if you want to go back to the screen share, let's go back to that next slide, and I'll show you guys what I think are the 3
Do you
parts.
think before we go to the screen share, you want to do a quick raffle, or do you want to?
Ooh, yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right, so
can we raffle this one right here?
You betcha. All right, so Scott Arizala, ladies and gentlemen, some gratuitous product placement, but that's what Wiser Cracks is all about. We got this stuff. We're giving it away. It's for parents. It's for youth development professionals. That's the whole idea. So as part of the big giveaway, Scott, you and I can turn off our webcams. We'll let Mark have the whole screen, and we can keep our mics on so we can keep him honest. But we're gonna actually let him go nuts doing a raffle for us.
All right. So we'll definitely give away Scott's book. We're gonna do this little gadget right here. And this is a digital flashlight alarm clock. You get the alarm clock, you get the date, the day of the week, even gives you the temp. And then there's also a flashlight built in. So this comes in great at camp. If a child needs to get up in the middle of the night, they have a light right by the side of their bed. So we'll give that away. We're also going to give away a Crazy Creek chair. This is a Crazy Creek hex chair. It differs from the regular Crazy Creek chairs in that it rolls up into a much tighter package than a traditional Crazy Creek. And then we'll do a $50 gift card as well.
Holy cow!
I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully the hat comes up this time. I know sometimes we have issues with the hat.
Well, you have a choice when you do the screen share, so we'll make sure it happens. Let's see. Oh, beautiful.
We're seeing the hat. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so first up is Scott's books, More Than Camp, and that is going to go to Ed Monick. Congratulations,
right.
Ed.
And it's actually, Ed Monk. Okay, fantastic. Congratulations, Ed. You just need to send your mailing address to chris@campspirit.com, and we'll make sure you get that.
All right, and next up is the digital flashlight alarm clock, and who's going home with that? Cindy Jones is going home with the digital flashlight alarm clock.
Nice. Cindy, when you get up in the middle of the night to do whatever you need to do in the middle of the night, you're going to be able to see really well.
Yes, you will. You will. All right, and next up,
you can set your alarm to do that.
Exactly.
Crazy Creek chair, and that is going to, I am not sure how to pronounce the first name.
Stark.
All right, congratulations. And last but not least, we have a $50 gift card, And that is going to Marie. Congratulations, Marie.
All righty, fantastic. So, Ed, once again, Chris@campspirit.com. Send us your mailing address. Cindy, Chache, and Marie, you guys are going to be sent your gear because we've got your info. Congratulations. All right, so now I'm going to grab the screen and we're going to say it's time for Scott to talk a little bit more.
All right. So if we hit that next screen, or the next slide, Chris, we could talk about how we do this. How do we really deliver the best kind of expectations? We talked about why. We talked about when, where, and what. Now comes how. How do we do it? In my opinion, it breaks down into sort of three chunks. We've got the communication aspect, the sort of components, what we're going to put into it, and then the facilitation. What does it sound like? So let's talk about the communication over there on the left. Really what it comes down to is the best kind of expectations are child-led, question-based, and positive versus negative language. And let's talk about what each one of those things means. Child-led. Really, this is about getting their ideas when it comes to, well, what should we be doing? Just tonight with my kids at dinner, one of the things that I asked is about how we should clean up. What do you think we should do to get to take care of all of our dishes and whatnot on the table? Now, we do it every single meal. We do it every night. It's not a new thing, but it was child-led, right? They decided they were going to stack up all the bowls, and Desmond was going to bring the bowls. They decided they were going to put all the silverware in a cup, and Linnea was going to do all the silverware. And then Griffin, of course, the littlest one, decides he wants to do the plates, which is the biggest part, but whatever. You can tell they're a camp family because that's exactly how you clean up at camp. But anyways, it was child-led, right? And so the communication is child-led, question-based, right? What I mean by that is that we can find out, we can get a lot more buy-in. We can find out a lot more about what they understand when we use questions versus statements. So we're going to talk a lot about what should be going on, what is okay to do. What are we going to be doing this afternoon? What do you think this activity is all about? If it's an activity like at camp, if you're going somewhere with the family, so on and so forth, but question-based. And then positive versus negative language, what we should be doing versus what we shouldn't be doing, what's okay versus what's not okay. Let's start with the positive versus negative language. That's what I mean by communication. And when you can do this, and let's just be very real with each other. I know what I'm asking of every parent and youth development professional out there. Not only do we live and come from a society that we are all constantly sort of under the gun, we are constantly late, we're constantly feeling stressed out about time. So adding 1 or 2 or 3 more minutes to every interaction is a big deal. And I'm not even saying that tongue in cheek. I mean, if your kids are like my kids at all, they've got this not only like crazy free association train of thought kind of speech where they get through 15 different ideas over the course of one sentence, but there's not a lot of clarity and succinctness in how they speak, right? And so I know what I'm asking people to do, and I know it's hard because I'm asking you to add these 1 or 2 or 3 minutes to a lot of our interactions. But when we do it, I think we get a lot of things in return. I think we get buy-in from kids about what we're supposed to be doing, what those expectations really are. I think we start to understand their sort of level of comprehension when it comes to why we're doing things and what we're doing and where they're at with it. And if your family is like mine, where developmentally they're spread pretty far. I mean, 3 to actually Linnea just turned 8, so she's not even 7 anymore. There can be a wide variety and a level of comprehension. And there's a feeling that kids get of empowerment. And if we're going to be very clear with each other, then I think we could all say that kids are actually in control. I know my kids anyways, they make choices that I don't want them to make, that if I was in control, they wouldn't make those choices. Yes, I'm the adult. Yes, I'm the one that creates the boundaries around which they make choices, but they are making the choices. And so if we can get their buy-in to what we're doing, if we can understand the level of comprehension and drive them towards that, and if they can feel empowered, hopefully they'll start making a lot better choices. So that's the communication piece. Now, this guy in the middle holding all these boxes, these are the components of really what goes into great expectations. And if you look at them, let's just go down the line. Do. So really, one of the big components of great expectations is understanding what I'm supposed to do. And we use positive examples about that. So just like we were talking about before, please walk versus don't run. We're going to use positive examples of what we're supposed to do. I will come back to this word remember in a minute because I think this is really key. But we're going to remember about what not to do. And so, again, I don't want to be sort of Pollyannish about this, or I do believe that there needs to be good boundaries and limits for kids. And we do need to say no and stop and don't sometimes. So talking about what we're not supposed to do is just fine. I just want it to be one of the components. And then there's this really key question that I want us to always ask kids when we start to come up with what are the things that we're not supposed to do. And that key question is why, or another way you can say that is how come. And one of the things that gets at, when you ask a kid, why are they not supposed to do something? They start putting together the rule or the thing that they're not supposed to do with the consequence. And that is part of your executive functioning, part of the sort of front part of your brain that does some of the serious thinking, right? Is being able to say to myself, if I do A, then B, C, or D might happen. It is a potential consequence. And that is a skill that will go well beyond your arguments over socks and shoes, your arguments about how much longer can somebody watch the iPad and all kinds of stuff. I mean, if we can help through creating great expectations, kids start to understand the why behind rules, they are going to be very empowered to make a bunch of really great choices. And then finally, the sort of speech bubble over here on the right, that's really about facilitation, right? When it comes time to creating these expectations with your kids, it's going to sound different, depending on who you are and how you talk to your kids and what the situation is. But these are some ideas. What are we going to do? What's going on right now? How are we going to handle X? What should we remember? I highlighted that word to in specific. Remember is such a key word to me because remember, just like we were talking about your brain before, remember is sort of a triggering word, right? I always say this to camp staff whenever I'm training. I say it to directors whenever I'm training as well. What's the most important part of a rule or an expectation? And without fail, they say, well, remembering it. And of course that's the most. If you can't remember all the rules, they're kind of stupid rules. So I always prep my kids with, well, what are we going to remember? And they don't never know really how to answer the question. So I always have to sort of follow it up with, like, what are the rules? What are we not supposed to do? And that's when they can start having this conversation. And I can start going, well, why or how come? And how are we going to remember? And sort of, what about this or what about that? So on and so forth. So that's really what I'm talking about when it comes to the facilitation piece. Chris, you ready to go back to some screen share here?
Yeah, absolutely.
To our webcams here?
Yeah, because I have an example. So one of the things that I think is really cool about what you said, and I want to bring it to life even more with an example of how your work has affected my parenting. Maybe about 5 years ago, so my boys are 12 and 14 now, so they were sort of 7 and 9 or something like that. And we were out visiting my sister-in-law in Seattle. We were walking around downtown Seattle and just without any particular goal except to, soak in the Seattle precious air. The origin of grunge, it was amazing. But we passed a Ferrari dealership, right? And big plate glass windows and these absolutely beautiful, $400,000 cars inside. So naturally, my 7 and 9-year-old and my sister-in-law's 7 and 9-year-old, 2 girls, 4 kids, all look at me because I'm leading the, excursion here. Can we go inside? Now, Daddy wants to go inside. But like, can you think of anything that would more quickly make the Ferrari salesperson pee his or her pants, or have an even bigger accident than like some guy dressed like he's from New Hampshire walks into the dealership with like 2 7-year-olds and 2 9-year-olds? So, but I channeled my inner Scott, and what I did was I said, okay, we can go in, but what do we need to remember? And they, of course, just look at me and, oh, we need to remember that Ferraris are made in Italy, says Dacia. I'm like, true. What else do we need to remember? So they came up with everything except what I wanted them to remember, which is don't touch anything. All right. So instead of saying don't touch, which contains the verb touch, which is just going to stick in their head, and it's just like you gave a camp-based example in your EOT video, don't touch the hot wax during candle making, right? And then, of course, as soon as a leader turns his or her head, everybody wants to touch it. Like, well, why not? How hot is it, right? So it's a totally natural human response. So instead of saying, don't touch anything, I said, we all need to keep our hands in our pockets the whole time. Now, what do we need to remember? And all four of them in a chorus, hands in our pockets. Okay. Say, what happens if someone takes their hands out of their pockets? Oh, they all look at me. So I'll tell you what's going to happen. We're all going to leave and we're not coming back, So, and why do we need to do this? Well, because these are expensive cars and somebody spent a long time polishing them. And, you give the rationale, which everybody wants to hear no matter how old they are. But I'm telling you that, like you said, okay, it's not magic, but it works most of the time. And it's fantastic. I'll tell you what the best part is. You don't have to feel like you're nagging as a parent. You're not, it's not, as you said, there's room for no, stop, and don't. But this was, they were beautifully behaved, hands in their pockets the whole time. Yep. We got to look at the cars. Nobody touched anything. Nobody had a heart attack. I didn't. The salesperson
and had one of them taken their hands out of their pockets and put their hands all over the cars or whatever. Now you have a backdrop to that conversation that is just solely different than I told you not to touch it, right? And you're back to nagging, back to yelling, all this kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, we talked about this. And when I asked you what was going to happen, you said we were going to have to leave. Here we go. Now we're going to leave, So it falls in line with the whole concept of natural consequences, which could be a whole nother webinar because, I think as parents, I know I do, we absolutely struggle with this. We struggle with, how do we not take away, the iPad tomorrow night when he's screwing around at, dinner time tonight. And it's like, well, iPad tomorrow night has nothing to do with dinner time tonight. But he really wants to watch the iPad tomorrow night. So anyways, maybe that's something else that we can do a webinar on.
That's a great idea. No, I think
it'll have to be a 6-hour webinar though.
So we're nearing the end of our half hour, and I think Mark's going to have to go in a minute. But for everybody who can stick around, Scott's going to be doing some Q&A. So you've got the chat box there on the right-hand side, and you can start typing in your questions. But before you have to go, any chance we could do one more raffle?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic.
I got more stuff.
All right. So I'm just going to, Scott, you and I can stay plugged in here. I'm just going to maximize Mark's screen for us, and we become little boxes at the bottom.
All right. So a couple more things to give away tonight. I have a $100 gift certificate, and I got this fine trunk behind me. If you were tuned in earlier, you heard Chris talking about how his kids have them, and they're virtually indestructible. Just in case, we offer a lifetime free warranty. So if your kid does manage to break it, we got you covered. So we'll go ahead and we'll give those away here. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get the hat back here.
The magic hat of power.
Chris, do you have a hat on there?
You're 2 for 2 tonight, Mark. Whatever you're doing.
I think I have this thing figured out.
All right.
So, all right, we'll do the $100 gift card first, and the winner is Troy. Congratulations, Troy! You got $100.
All right, Troy.
At everythingsummercamp.com. And last but not least, we have our Happy Camper Camp trunk, and the winner of the trunk is Michael. Congratulations, Michael.
Michael, you're going to have that for the whole rest of your life, so start using it tomorrow. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for being part of this. Owners, directors, parents, check out everythingsummercamp.com. Everything you need for the packing list is on there, and is phenomenal quality, which is why Mark and I have stayed friends for so long.
All right. Well, like Chris said, everybody, I have to head out. I have a prior engagement, but I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And we'll see you at the next webinar. I'm sure Chris will give some details on that. And Chris and Scott will stick around to answer your questions tonight. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks a
All
lot,
right,
Mark.
thanks, Mark.
All right. So let's go back to talking about this kind of positive parenting and stating rules in the positive. I have a poll that I would love for people to take. People are sticking around for Q&A, and I'm just going to load this up, and we're going to see what rule from among these choices do you most often state in the negative. And actually, let me. I want to reset the poll because I want to make sure that it's. We're going to see the results in real time. All right, so here we go. What rule from among these choices do you most often state in the negative? Don't forget to brush your teeth. Don't forget to do your homework. Don't chew with your mouth full. Stop being rude. Stop bothering your brother or sister. Stop interrupting me. Stop playing with your phone. Don't bother me while I'm working. And my favorite, can't you see that I'm on the phone? So let's. I don't know. I just totally made these up. I have no idea where they came from.
Oh, stop bothering your brother and sister is winning. Go, go,
All
go.
right. Oh, stop being rude. Stop. Oh, you're right. Stop bothering your brother and sister. Now it's 67%. Stop being rude at 29%. 14% for stop interrupting me. 13%. Oh, come on, people, weigh in. Start clicking.
Oh,
Wow, stop bothering your brother or sister. Winning out
yeah.
at 67%. All right. So look,
You guys,
this is great.
I'm right there with every one of you.
So Scott, can you talk a little bit about um, let's bring these concepts to life. So stating things in the positive, we understand sort of neurologically why stating the positive alternate behavior has more staying power than talking about what you don't want to see. What are some ways that moms and dads or aunts and uncles, grandmas, grandpas, whoever the primary caregivers are for these kids, how could they say something like stop bothering your brother and sister in the positive? Like, what does that sound like?
Well, I think it depends on what's going on. I think in my house, a lot of the times it's what are we doing right now? Like, what's going on, right? Sometimes it's about repeating what another kid has said, but using more positive language. For example, Linnea, who's 8, is super into Lego sets, right? Her little brothers, who are 4 and 3, are super into destroying her Lego sets. And so they will come even close, and she'll automatically just screech out, Desmond, get away, and all this kind of stuff, right? And so a lot of times I'm translating for her, and I'm saying, I've heard her ask you to look only with your eyes, or I've heard her ask you, if you're going to come over here to watch, you need to sit in the chair and watch. I've heard her say that, touching it or breaking parts of it is not okay with her. So we got to keep our hands to ourselves, those kinds of things. So sometimes it's about that refereeing, and other times it's more about, again, getting back to staying focused in the moment of, well, what are we doing right now? Right? Yeah. Because a lot of times in my house, and maybe this is true of everybody else, but a lot of times in my house, they start getting at each other when the activity is either falling apart or they're really deep into it. It's never sort of it's never sort of during the robust part of play, right? It's either they're like so deep in the game that they can't come out and they're just wrestling and they're just going to keep wrestling until there's blood, or they're like, two of them are feeling kind of bored with the Legos, and everyone, somebody wants to kind of move on, and somebody wants to go to the basement, but nobody wants to go to the basement by themselves because they all think that the basement is scary. And, and so that's when they start kind of getting at each other. And that's when you have to sort of break it up. And again, coming back to what are we going to do? Why are we doing that? Well, if we're going to do that, what do we need to remember? So on and so forth.
So what I love about all three of your examples, they all stated the positive alternate behavior. So when you're translating for Linnea and you're saying, I heard her ask you to sit next to her. I heard her say that you can play, but you can't take it apart, or, whatever it is. So again, what we're trying to do is create this image in people's minds of the target. What is the
Yeah.
desired behavior? And I just hear all the time, at the school where I work, other places I go, um, a really common way to begin a direction is don't forget. You know, even like when I was in the plane coming back from wherever wherever I was, San Francisco last week, the flight attendant saying, "Don't forget to stow the tray table," and it's already like, well, forgetting is bad. So now you're inserting that, and the don't is negative. So it's and about half the time they'll say, uh, you know, put your tray table in the upright and locked position. Okay, so now I have an image that is just more positive. It does two things, I
Yeah.
think, right? It creates the picture of the target behavior, and it also, I think, just makes people feel better because it's a positive thing instead of don't forget. I'd rather say to my kids, uh, put your bowls and plates in the dishwasher than
Yeah.
don't forget to put your bowls and plates in the dishwasher. Or I like the way you
Yeah.
put it,
Well,
remember.
yeah. And again, it takes some of the nagging out of it. Not and again, I'm sure you feel the same way. Probably all the parents on the webinar feel the same way. I mean, so much of my life I feel like is just spent like nagging my kids. Like saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I get this all the time when I'm at professional conferences and doing speaking engagements and stuff. People always want to say, oh my gosh, your kids must just be, great, all this stuff, whatever. And it's like, no, none of this stuff works with my kids. Like, give me your kids. It'll work with your kids.
That's right.
But no, but the point is that, it's tongue in cheek, but the point is that, this stuff is hard.
Yeah.
It sounds easy. It sounds, oh yeah, I mean, I can say walk please instead of don't run. Duh. I can say that, but it's hard because of the consistent nature of it all. We have to work really hard at all this. And somebody who, teaches this stuff every single day, almost hourly, I catch myself. And I think that's another thing that we have to be okay with, or we have to understand, I guess, is that, kids are going to give us a pretty wide latitude to screw all this stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we try, the more we're consistent, the more we rehearse and practice ourselves, the better, it's going to be for them. Again, this is about creating that foundation of success for kids. So much of what we do and what kids experience is based on adult convenience. It's even at something as fun as summer camp. Even if you want to take, put school aside, put after school aside, put your morning routine aside, something strictly that's right, just for fun, right? Summer camp, just recreation and fun. Well, think about things like how we schedule kids at summer camp, or where why we put them in the particular cabins that we put them in, right? If we're going to be honest with each other, there's a lot of adult convenience built in there. It's not purely because that's the best thing for the kid to have the most amount of fun and whatever. And then we sort of create the fun and the magic around that. Now think about like your environment at school, or after school care, or the morning routine at home, just trying to get everybody out the door. A lot of what we're doing for kids is based on this, like, it's best for me if we do it this way. Right. And so the more we can create that foundation where they understand what those expectations are, the more they're going to be able to read those signals everywhere else. They're going to go in and be able to figure it out. All right, the adults in school have planned it all like this, right? This is what they want from me. And if I just do these things, I'll be successful at school. I mean, it's relatively that simple. Now, I'm not trying to say that some kids, aren't really gifted and some kids struggle and have learning disabilities. All that aside, I'm more talking about the sort of social experience that happens in school or anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest take home, for me. And again, I've been listening to you for 6 or 7 years riff on this theme, and it really, as you said, first of all, it takes a lot of practice, but you do get good at catching yourself stating the negative and substituting the positive alternate. I know it has an effect on my mood. It gives you legs to stand on when there's some sort of violation of the target behavior, somebody's not reaching their goal. But I think it's highly motivating for the kids as well. Like, I honestly think there's a net gain in positive behavior. And
do you want to break down what that net gain is? right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, the better choices that they make, what do they get from it? I mean, it's easy for us to understand, right? Like, well, kids who act better are like better to be in my program, they're better to be in my classroom, they're generally better to be around, whatever, they're better
We'll
to be in
keep
my
them as
living
our
room.
children, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. So the benefits are clear for us, but like, let's talk about the benefits for them, right? Like when they make better choices, when they can figure that part out, they get more positive attention from adults. Clear, right? They get, whether you're doing praise the right way or not, it doesn't matter. They're getting more of that. Hey, great job, buddy! High five! That was amazing. All that kind of stuff from adults. I think the other thing that they get is there's some social benefits to it, right? That it's like not only from adults but from everybody else. You're better to be around. You're easier to be around when you're acting right.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I think the final thing is that and then as a psychologist, you probably use this term way more than I do, but the sort of social scientists, I feel like, are starting to say more and more, starting to talk about positive self-concept, which seems to be a mashup of all these things we used to talk about, like in the 90s and the early 2000s, about self-esteem and resilience and grit and all this other kind of stuff, all kind of being put together in this thing called self-concept, like your whole picture of yourself. And when you're able to make great choices, your confidence rises, your competence rises, your sense of success, that feeling of like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. All these things increase your sense of self-concept, right? That positive self-concept. Kids are getting a lot out of this if we can help create that foundation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think quite frankly, I'm also in a better mood at the end of the day if I've said more positive things to my kids than if I've been admonishing them. And
Yep.
I've gotten all the same messages across, but
Yep.
the language has been different. Um,
Absolutely.
hey, let's do another poll here because they're just fun. And I think I prepped another one. Let's see. Did I have another one? I thought I had another one. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the questions here. So I know that one of the things that people are wondering about is what's a good place to start just in daily activity? Where do you think that there's, besides, leave your brother alone and your sister alone, but where, where else, like what's the low hanging fruit? What do you think are some of the most common admonitions stated in the negative that any parent or camp director listening right now could start with? We want to make one small change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Do you have a thought?
I, I would take stock of your sort of the different points of tension during the day, and the things that you feel like you repeat over and over and over again. So my
Okay.
example at the beginning was about your socks and shoes. Get your socks and shoes on, over and over and over and over again. So what I've done, just to be clear with everybody, is that we now have a picture, like a visual chart of what you need to do to get out the door, and every kid gets to like check off each box because they each have a column and they each get to check off the box. And so now one of the things that I've done is I'm just referring to the schedule. Have you done all your things that you need to do? And for Linnea, it's written because she can read now. Desmond, it's written with a picture because he's learning to read, and Griffin it's a word in a picture as well, but he's really just looking at the picture. But the whole point is that was a big point of tension for us, right?
Okay.
And that was something I was repeating over and over and over again all the time. So I think that's one of the places that you can look. I think another place that is sort of classic for a lot of families is, and actually camp professionals and anybody working with kids, is transitions. When you're going from one thing to the next, right? Because that's a perfect opportunity to wrap up what we just did by saying, that was so much fun, or wow, that was kind of hard, whatever was going on, to like, all right, what's happening next? All right, yep, we're getting in the car and then we got to go to school. All right. And so, all right, what do we need to do to get in the car? And really start the conversation there, but using the transition as a way to preview kind of what's next. Are there things that we need to remember? Yes, I want to bring this toy in the car, but I can't hit my brother with it, whatever.
Yeah, I think any parent listening tonight, if they can ask themselves, what are the times during the day when I'm either repeating myself or I feel stressed?
Yep.
in relation to my relationship with my kids, that's where to start and see
Yep.
whether you can state the target behavior in a positive way. Uh, Rehearse that a little bit tonight, and you'll be good to go for tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And right, if you get one in, you've got some traction, and
Just
you'll
one.
notice the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll feel much better. And like I said, your kids are going to give you wide latitude to screw this up, right? So you're going to be all fired up. You're going to be like, I told you to stop. And then you're going to stop yourself and go, all right, folks, I would like you to get everything off the table. We need to clean it up because we got to do that before bed or before bath time.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. Let me just add one other thing too, which I think you and I both try to do as parents, and it's tremendously therapeutic, and I think a great example to set for our kids, because obviously, like every parent, we make mistakes. Having a sense of humor about what it is that we're trying, what it is that we're doing. Um, you've known me for 20 plus years, and I left to my own devices, I just can keep talking. And when I get on a roll with my kids, sometimes when there's nobody at home, it's really weird. But my kids, to their credit, now 12 and 14, have always, almost always, listened attentively when they can tell they can hear the tone of my voice, and I'm going to give this lecture, right?
Yeah.
And they will often wait till I finish, and I've kind of burned myself out and feel like I've reiterated my points. And, one of them, or maybe both of them, would get this sort of little, smile in the corner of their mouth. And one of somebody is going to say, good lecture, Dad. You were on fire there. That was pretty good. Now, right, like, you got a choice there as a parent. You can either just completely lose your junk and be angry at your kids for, I don't know what, not taking you seriously enough. But really, it's this moment of levity that gives you an opportunity to connect with your kids. And so no parent wants to be ridiculed, but if you can't laugh at yourself, especially when you're spinning off in an odd direction, or like you said, you kind of self-correct, you said it in the negative, and then you say, okay, hang on. What I meant to say was everything comes off the table and put it in the sink. And you've eliminated, don't drop any food on the floor. Don't forget to do this. Don't forget to do that. And it just, like, everything feels better. But gosh, if we can't laugh at ourselves when we are redirecting our own behavior, or when we're on some kind of a wacky roll or something, or when I go on some lecture, then we've lost part of that opportunity to connect. And you and I have talked about this a lot. Our kids listen to us because they love us, and we listen to them because we love them. And when you have opportunities, even in the heat of the moment, to make this kind of authentic connection, that's what promotes compliance in the future. It's not arbitrary, And again, like you said, some kids maybe have developmental disabilities. There are other things that cause some misbehaviors, but with every kid, regardless of the level of difficulty, that connection, it's gold.
Yeah, for sure. I lost my cool the other night. Everybody seemed to be getting after me, and it was just like one of those nights at home. And we talk a lot about fussing and fighting, and that's kind of the age of my kids, right? So I told everybody that I just needed to go take a time out. I need to take a little break. I'm going to go downstairs and take a break. And I came downstairs, and Linnea, the 8-year-old, came down, and she sat down next to me, and she says, wow, Dad, doing a lot of fussing and fighting tonight.
Right. Yeah. And, right. Like,
if one of those moments.
It's true. And if your response had been, don't you tell me about fussing and fighting, it's like, God, this is so amazing. Here comes your 8-year-old downstairs to soothe you, to give you some companionship, and also,
kind of calm me out a little bit.
Yeah. Like, it's great. So, all right. Yeah. Look, we are wrapping up the hour here. For those of you, and it's been most of you who have stayed for the bonus 30 minutes of Q&A. Really happy that you stuck around. Want to give Scott a little bit of a chance to, before I put his website up on the screen, can you tell us a little bit about your books, More Than Camp? And I see that you've put up.
Yeah, sure.
Tell us what's in there, because people want to know.
Yeah. So basically, it's It's basically a guide for camp counselors, youth development professionals, parents about working with kids. It goes kind of through behavior stuff, communication ideas, really everything that I could think of. To what I wanted to do is I wanted to write a sort of practical guide to help people really be better working with kids, whether that's in small groups, whether that's at home with your kids, or big groups like at camp. So that's really what it's about. It's called It's More Than Camp, and it's available on my website, which is thecampcounselor.com.
Fantastic. Scott, I'm going to screen share here for a second. People is your email address, scott@thecampcounselor.com. So if people have follow-up questions for Scott about this concept of rules were made to be positive, positive parenting is a fairly general phrase. Scott tonight has really given us a lot of good examples and a fantastic framework for stating a positive alternate behavior, for giving your kids a rationale, for using words like remember instead of don't forget. And it's an extremely powerful technique. Scott's got a lot of resources on his website, which is thecampcounselor.com. You can email him at scott@thecampcounselor.com. And I also want to close by telling you what's planned for March and April. On March 1st, our special guest is going to be Steve McGuire. He's going to be hosting a webinar in the WISER Crack series called Masterful Meetings at Home and at Work. So, we all sort of gather in groups, whether, we pull our family together to sort of talk about what's going to happen that day, or we pull our senior staff together and talk about, how the field day is going to run at camp, whatever it is. Steve's got some amazing ideas about making meetings fun, efficient, playful, and short. And then in April, Sylvia Van Meerten, also an expert online training faculty member, is going to do really interesting, powerful webinar on helping awkward kids fit in. And I said to Sylvia the other night when we were talking, it's kind of, this is like for everyone, right? Because there are times when everyone is awkward. And there was this funny, awkward silence. And she said, well, yes, Chris, like even you. So like, how would we just call this helping everyone fit in? But look, this is about teaching your kids social skills. And then throughout the spring, I'm going to be doing additional live versions of top 10 camp prep tips, because we're all going to get ready for camp, and then some tutorials for camp directors and owners about using expert online training. So for the parents out there, I want to say thank you for joining us, and especially those of you who stayed for the Q&A. You want to find out more about camp gear, the website is everythingsummercamp.com. If you want to find out how staff are trained at your camp pre-season, you can visit expertonlinetraining.com. Scott and I are faculty there, and ask your camp owner and director, are you using expertonlinetraining.com? It is the world's leading website for online training of youth leaders. And once again, Scott's website, thecampcounselor.com.